Hello and welcome to Latter-day Profiles. I'm Brian Howard. We're here at the LAS Motion Picture Studio in Provo, Utah, and joining me today is Serena and David Essuman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you. I was doing some research for people I thought would be pretty cool guests, and I ran across your blog, Life at Casa, and then your background from Italy. And then, David, you've got quite the entrepreneur, all kinds of things going on, lots of fun things going on. So glad. Thanks for taking some time to do that. So, David, let's start out with you. Tell me about that. Where are you from? You grew up in California, right?
Yes, that's right. I grew up in a small town. It's called Turlock, California. So it's predominantly an agricultural town. So lots of cows, lots of horses. And I've been there my whole life until I went to school at BYU.
Yeah. Tell me about background as far as church goes, multi-generational. When did your family come into the church?
So my parents, they're originally from Ghana.
Oh,
so
okay.
Accra. And so they met in Ghana, immigrated to the United States. Missionaries knocked on their door, shared the gospel with them. They got baptized. Then my brother, he was already born. He was born in Africa. He was in Africa during the interim. Then the rest of us came. My sisters, I have 4 sisters, and then myself. And we grew up in California. Missionaries found us. We were born in the gospel, and that's where we are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great story. Serena grew up in Italy and then Spain.
Yes.
Kind of a jump. Tell us about, for you, life growing up in Italy. What was life like for you and your family?
Yeah, so we grew up in a small town, actually. It was very close to Torino. That was our hometown. Torino was a huge town, but where we lived was in the outskirts. So it was really small. We had fields around us. My dad had a tractor. He helped my grandfather with the, fields. And in middle school, I started going more to the city for school. We studied music. My parents enrolled me in a conservatory. So that kind of introduced me to life in the city. But that was kind of my dynamic, like from the country to the city, but always in Italy until we moved to Spain when I was 14.
And what was that like moving? What a big jump going from Italy to a new country, new language. How was that for you?
Yeah, it was. Luckily, they gave me a year to prepare for it, but it was a shock. I remember sitting at my kitchen table one day thinking, I will not be here one day. We are moving. I'm leaving my child at home. Our home, we have owned it in the family since the 1600s, so it was a shock. But they hired a tutor for a few months, and then in August of 2004, we hopped on a plane and moved there. But yeah, it was a hard change. As a kid, I think it's hard to comprehend sometimes what your parents are doing and trust them. But it turned out to be a great experience. It turned out to be a great adventure. It helped me get out of my shell, learn another language, meet new people, and know that life will be okay no matter where you live.
Yeah. And tell me about the role of the church in your life at that point.
Yes, so I was actually born as well from parents that were both members of a church. They were both converts, though. My mom met the church because her dad met it first. He told her that he had met the missionaries. He was going to study the Book of Mormon and the Gospel first. He wasn't just going to introduce them to it. They were all Catholics. So after my grandfather thought it was a good thing, then he allowed also my mom and her siblings to look into it and discover on their own if they were interested in it. My mom was 14 at the time, and she felt that it was the right choice for her, so she chose to join the church. And my dad instead met the church on his own as well. He ran into the missionaries in Torino, walking the streets. And that's also how he joined the church on his own. And then eventually they both met at a church activity.
I wanted to ask you, it's growing up, very different from my upbringing. I grew up in rural Idaho with lots of members around. What was it like for you with church and activities? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely, there were times where you kind of had to ask yourself, everyone's Catholic, right? And you're like, it's like a culture. So there were many times where you kind of think, why? Like, we're part of this tiny, tiny little church. The missionaries are kind of they bring that light, right, from their home, where they're trying to keep your hopes up and be like, no, this church is great. You see everything on TV in a way. So you kind of had to think beyond kind of what you see. But I think ultimately we know that it's not just the building where you go, because our church building was extremely small compared to the Catholic churches where we have these massive buildings. So yeah, you kind of I guess at the end of the day, the gospel speaks for itself, right? Like you learn the truth because you feel it in your heart. But yeah, it was definitely a journey, right? Where many times I had to, throughout my life, have those moments where you just sit there and think, okay, is this what I want for me? Does this seem right? My parents have told me that this is something that they felt was the right thing for them, but is this something that I see myself doing that I believe in?
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask you your educational experience. So now both of you ended up at BYU.
Yes.
How did you decide that that was a thing for you, David?
Going to BYU? Well, I put my application to all the BYU schools. I always knew that I was going to go to a BYU school. I just didn't know which one. Quite ironically, I actually got denied going to BYU the first time. I was on vacation and I forgot to take the ACT test. And I was like, oh, that's a prerequisite to get into BYU. So I raced back, took it. They looked at all my extracurricular activities. I was really involved in my school and had good grades. And so they reconsidered. I got a call. They said, if we're ready for you, you could come. And so I decided to go to Brigham Young University in Utah.
Yeah, good experience.
It was a great experience. Yeah, I got my degree in psychology. And it was a great experience because I met my wife there. So absolutely.
And why did you decide psychology? What was your reason for that?
Well, at first I was enrolled in business, and I love business. I grew up and worked in my family business, and I don't know. I just felt like pulled towards psychology. I knew that I would be dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, whether it be with my wife, my kids, my business associates. And so I figured, let's try something new. Let's get out of the comfort zone. And honestly, I wasn't really good at math or economics, so worked out perfectly.
Those are the tough ones, right? Yeah. Those classes. Well, tell me about your decision. You ended up at BYU. Had you planned to go there? What was your thought on education?
Yeah, I think I always knew I wanted to go to college. My parents instilled that desire in me. They always talked about higher education. I did more arts in Italy. Like I played the flute at a conservatory. For a while, I thought I was gonna go into like actual graphic arts as well. I even thought of, now that I go down the line, I'm like, there are lots of things that I considered. But push come to shove when it came to it, even my own teachers in high school, I remember that they were good mentors for me, and they all recommended college because I was considering staying behind, going to beauty school, doing other things, and they all said, look, go to college, it will be a lot better for you. You can always do that later. And yet, right around when I was 16, that's when I decided, okay, I want to go to college. And I'm glad I decided that early because I needed the grades for it. So that's when I actually started to study really well and improve my grades. Because before I was a type of student that I was okay with, just passing by. Super satisfied. As long as I passed my classes, I was happy. I didn't consider myself not smart, but for me, it's like, as long as I'm coasting, I'm happy in life. But yeah, I actually happened to come to the U.S. as well when I was like 15 because my brother got married in California, and we visited California and Utah. And I remember coming back and just thinking, okay, I loved BYU. We visited campus. I absolutely can't wait to go. I knew I had 2 years, so at least I got a glimpse of it, of what was waiting for me if I worked really hard. So then, yeah, throughout those years, I worked hard for it. And I graduated when I was 17 because there is a year less of school in Spain compared to Italy. And I applied to the English course originally for BYU, the ELC, I think it's called. So then, yeah, I came. My brother was here, luckily, so that kind of gave me like a step up. What would you say? Like a little advantage, I guess. Some help. And then I arrived. Not to throw a wrench into my story, but 5 days before actually I came to BYU, my mom passed away suddenly. So that definitely kind of put me at that crossroad where I thought, do I go to the U.S.? Do I stay behind? My dad was considering keeping me home to help with my younger siblings. Ultimately, he felt that it was probably better for me to have a fresh start and just go somewhere else. He told me, leave your past behind. You know what we know. We know that we'll be united someday. He was just like, look forward, don't look back. And so came here, started just studying really hard and focused on, my future instead. I got into BYU after 4 months and then started going to school full force. It was not easy, though. I will say I decided to go into teaching, but it took me so long to decide what I wanted to do. Anyways, it was a very long journey for me because some of the things I wanted to do, being that I was from a different country, I didn't have the prerequisites for. So yeah, it took me a very long time. I did all my G's at first. I took classes that I wanted to take that I thought would be interesting. I ended up doing languages because I lived half of my life in Italy, half of my life in Spain, and I felt like I didn't know the history, I didn't know the grammar, so that's what I did during my time.
Yeah, no. Tell me about you two meeting. So how did you meet? Who wants to tell us that story? We'll start with you, and then we'll
There
make
you
sure
go.
it's correct.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to probably be a different, different story than mine.
Yeah.
Well, I served an LDS mission in Brazil, and I returned home from my mission, and my friend had served actually in Italy. My best friend growing up from California, he was in town from BYU-Idaho, and he's like, "We're a bunch of us are getting together from the mission and bringing all these Italian people." And so I was like, "Well, might as well show up. Yeah, it sounds fun." And sure enough, my wife was there. Not my wife at the time, but she was there. And I saw her and I was like, this girl has an aura about her. I really like her. I actually had a friend ask her for me in Italian to see if she was okay with me asking her on a date. Long story short, he actually liked her too. So I don't know what was said, but we found each other. I asked her out on a date. We went out for a couple times and we just ended up being together almost every other day. So
Yeah.
that's the short, condensed version of it.
No, it's pretty good. Yeah, we actually met the same weekend of President's Day. That just happened a week ago, and we actually hung out with the same friend that introduced us.
We did. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, now we both are all married and have 4 kids, and we had a great time. Yeah, remembering all days, but yeah.
So you're married. Obviously, you're now finishing up school. What were your plans? What were you thinking you might do? Did you have plans together? Were you going to go into business? What were you thinking?
Be honest. Oh, I guess I'll let you go. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think at that time, actually, it's a very hard time in life, right? To decide. We actually took some breaks. We took some semester off that time to decide what we wanted to do. It took you a while. You were doing business at first because you always call yourself a businessman. But eventually, we were working during the summer too, so we could save enough money to study during the winter. So
I did door-to-door sales, for a number of years.
yes. So during the summer we would leave, which was great because also allowed us to venture outside of Utah and visit other states. Being that I was new to the U.S., I think it allowed me to kind of get to know what the U.S. was like, the culture, the different states. Like we got to know Texas and see how they say you all there, and get to know the Bible Belt and how people do things there. Get to go to Alaska, East Coast, California. Also see where we wanted to live, kind of like ponder, like, hey, will we ever come back and live here? So we definitely, it was quick. Now that I look back, it was only a matter of a couple of years, but we definitely got to explore so we could see. But definitely we didn't just make one decision and go for it. We did also do it was going against the flow. The fact that even I took a semester off for a lot of people was shocking. They're afraid I would never go back to school. You did the same. Your parents are terrified that you will never graduate from college because of that. But it allowed us to work, save money for school, ponder as to what we wanted to do. And once we came back, we actually, I think, graduated faster because you knew, okay, I'm going to do psychology, just finish fast, get done. And we had our first child by the time I graduated. I took my last finals with my first child. And then I was pregnant with our second when you graduated.
Correct. Yeah.
After that, that's when we made that drastic change and we got into real estate. I got my license first, and then I said, you should get it too. This would be a great opportunity. And then he got his license.
Yeah.
So then you got started, and then the current company now is Voya Real Estate.
Yeah,
is
that's
that right?
correct. Yeah, you
That's
said it
right.
perfectly.
And you've got so many things going on, and so I don't know if this was a mutual thing, but you've got from Idaho to St. George, you got lots of different businesses going. How did that come about? How did you get started?
Yeah, so when I got it started in real estate, I loved the flexibility it offered. Family is always number one for me. Being able to serve in the church, number one for me as well. And so when we got into real estate, we decided, okay, whatever we do, we always need to make sure that we're putting our focus on the right things. Real estate allowed us to make enough money to support our family, travel to see her family, which was still in Italy. And I loved serving people. I loved helping people.
We
And
loved homes.
we
yeah.
loved looking at homes we couldn't afford. So we'd help other people afford those homes, thinking one day we'll get our own. But I did that for a number of years. But I knew that ultimately one day I wouldn't be able to work anymore. So I told my wife, let's start investing in real estate. So we started buying rental properties. Then I knew that, our kids would need funds to go to college. And so we're like, well, let's start investing in franchising. So the first franchise we invested in and started from the ground up was Crumble Cookies in Lehigh, Utah. So we started that from the ground up. We visited a cookie shop and we're like, oh, this seems really easy to do. A couple years later, we sold that business. But right before we sold our Crumble Cookies, we got into another franchise, Cookie Cutters Haircuts for Kids. And that's what initiated our move to St. George, Utah. That area was open. And so she had always wanted to move to St. George. And so I was like, well, this is the time. So we did a short-term lease for like 3 months while we were getting that location up and running. But we both felt inspired to actually stay there. So we actually stayed there for a year and
About 2 years.
about almost 2 years.
Yeah.
We stayed there for 2 years. I got called in the bishopric twice while I was there, once the ward split. We moved back to Utah County, to Vineyard, got called in the bishopric a third time. And then at that point, we decided to expand our franchising opportunities into the joint chiropractic. So currently we're in Idaho Falls, Twin Falls, and Pocatello, and now we're expanding into South Florida market.
Wow, that's amazing. South Florida, now that's
Yes,
a big
Miami,
expansion.
yeah, we're going to
You're looking for
Miami,
warm
right?
climates. You got to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
St. George wasn't quite warm enough.
Yeah.
But how do you get to work together with this? Is this something mutual? Do you collaborate? How do you do
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question because
Great question. Yeah.
something that I feel like we've always tried to do is that it has to be an element of passion in everything you do because otherwise you burn out. So everything that we chose along the way was something that, in common terms, you dreamed of. And so, for example, cookie cutters. As I mentioned before, I wanted to go to beauty school before college. So this, for me, was a way to channel into that desire that I've always had. My great-grandmother owned a salon. She's actually from Asiago, where the cheese comes from in Italy. And she owned a salon. And so she taught my grandmother, who taught my mom, who taught me to cut hair. So this, for me, was a way to kind of like continue on with that. Cookies too, I love to cook. Yeah, but we also love to be in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, yeah, cookies, that seemed easier.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the restaurant is complicated. And then real estate, same thing. We loved houses. We were spending we would always hop in the car and just go look at homes. So it was nice to have a job that naturally, it didn't feel like work when we were putting our time and effort towards it. Like our spare time didn't feel like we were working. Talking about it with people never felt like work. We just loved this so much. We would never get tired of it.
Yeah.
It never felt like actual work in a way. And as you mentioned, it was a lot putting those puzzle pieces together. Like, okay, we want to go to Italy. We need a job that allows us to have an extended period of time off. What can we do? And then, yes, if we want to raise the kids from home, what can we do so that we can fulfill both of those needs?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Obviously enjoy it. And you actually do some coaching with it, right? To help out.
Yeah,
with-
so I help others. I own a real estate brokerage, and so there are other agents that work with us and a property management company. So we coach people who want to invest in real estate and kind of diversify and just be able to kind of support their lifestyle and save for retirement. And then I was thinking, it's funny that you mentioned about how these franchises were a result of something that we always wanted to do. I always wanted to be a doctor when I was a little kid. So I guess the joint chiropractic, I work with a lot of doctors. And so I guess I'm fulfilling that dream.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, we said we were done with the cookie business, but we're actually in Dirty Dough Cookies right now because of a opportunity to consult for them. So they invited us to take part in a couple of franchises with them.
Yeah. And again, who can turn out cookies?
Yeah.
It's a great
You're right.
opportunity. You started doing some social media and blogging, and the Casa, right? Which is I call it correctly. So you're on there a lot, but I see lots of pictures of the family. So you got your children on there. You got cooking. You got fashion. What motivated that? Getting into social media and blogging.
Yeah, what motivated it? Great question. I think just years ago, I would always obviously watch other people do it. And I think there just came a point where it's like, okay, I'm here. I have the desire to do it. Like photography seems really fun. When I started originally, actually, my page was, I was doing interior design pictures. That was when Instagram was extremely small, no one was on it. It actually grew really fast. And then eventually I took a break. And that's when I decided, okay, let's do things about our family. Because I felt like everyone was always approaching me, telling us, your kids should model. And of course, everybody wants that. But I remember thinking, well, since so many people are telling me, let's try it out. So that's kind of where I thought, okay, let's take pictures of our kids. I think they're cute. Hopefully other people think that too. And yes, I like fashion too because I'm Italian. So I'm like, oh, let's channel this. And
This is news to me because I always thought she was posting for our family.
That
They live
too,
so
yeah.
far away in different
too,
places.
I mean, ultimately, that's what social media is for. But I also, after I had my last baby, especially, I felt like I was like, okay, I have lots of recipes. I like to clean my house. I feel like I'm pretty good at keeping it clean. And I have quite a few friends that were pushing me. They're like, you should do it. Like, you're always so organized. You should start a blog. So finally, I'm like, okay, let's do it. It took me a long time to actually even gather the courage to post anything. I wrote over 100 articles and I would just like draft them and not publish them. I kept thinking someday I will start publishing them. And then I just decided to like kind of do it. I was always like slowly inching my way in. I read lots of books about it because I was like, okay, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it well. It never actually went, I think, according to how, in my mind, I would have wanted to do, because of course everybody's striving for like the millions of followers, but it's been a fun experience, just the fact that I was able to write my recipes, record them. When people ask me for a recipe, I could give it to them. A lot of my motivation behind it actually became my kids. I kept thinking of how someday they're not going to live at home, and I have lots of Italian recipes. I reduce sugar in recipes. I try to make them healthier. I'm really into nutrition and fitness. So I just thought I want to be able to them say, hey, Mom, remember this recipe? And just be like, right here. I have instructions. I have a picture. You're even in it. Remember when we made it? Let's remember this. So that's kind of what drove it. Yeah, it's Instagram. I'm not gonna lie, it's a difficult thing. So that's why it's like I'll take breaks and go back. It can suck you in. It can take a lot of your time. But the biggest thing, I think, I was like, I want to share, if I can, some of my talents.
Yeah.
Hopefully, someone will benefit from it.
No, that's a great thing. And I was thinking, and on your blog, you very specifically mentioned they're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Any motivation to put that on there? You just want to share who you are? I mean, sometimes people are reticent to do that because sometimes it drives people away. But on the flip side, being able to share who we are is a good thing. So what brought you to do that?
Yeah, I think, it is a big part of our lives, right? It's not something that I can hide. I think when I was a kid, if someone asked me, it's like I will get all nervous and it's like, I gotta tell them I'm part of this church. But once you realize that, like, you don't know the reaction, right? There's that fear.
Sure.
But I realized that this is what I believe in. So if someone is gonna go away because of it, that's not my problem. I really believe that the gospel has enriched my life and is making it better, and I am committed to it. So I do come with the whole package. I'm not gonna shove down my beliefs to anyone, but when I share my journey, when I share my life, when I share a story, I know that a lot of the decisions I make, I involve God in it, and I learned what I do because of the church. And so I would rather people know, and I try and share in a delicate way, again, where I never impose anything on anyone, but I'm also gonna have to include it because it is a part of every decision we make, everything we do on our daily lives.
It's been such a pleasure to talk with you, David and Serena Essuman. Encourage people, if you want to check out, they can look at some of the pictures and such, recipes, that kind of thing, also on the website. And David, you have one as well. It talks about things that you do. Really, really fun stuff. So anyway, thank you very much for taking the time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.